I like it. I mean, for me, look, the way I approach all of Star Wars since Lucas sold it is just all of it is fan fiction. All of it is fan fiction, right? Of the movies, the only one that I thought was good fan fiction was Rogue One, which I enjoyed, right? I thought that was good fan fiction. I think there's been some good fan fiction on the TV shows. I've enjoyed a lot of The Mandalorian, probably a little bit more than some people did. I enjoyed parts of Boba Fett, again, probably a little bit more than people did. And then, and I'm enjoying Ahsoka very much. And so maybe that will maybe loop us a little forward to what is storytelling. But let me explain my approach to storytelling. Okay. Before we even talk about what is storytelling, because that's a very broad thing. So maybe there's a reason why my critiques are a little different from maybe other members of the panel. I don't know what Brianna thinks of it, but we'll find. Oh, okay. Well, then that's good. Yeah. Good. It's fair, neutral. You're the blank rune in the rune set. That's good. I like it. And so look, this is something I say to people because there have been people when I've done positive reviews on my Patreon of things like I liked the final episode of Boba Fett. I thought the show was very uneven, but I thought the final episode was a lot of fun. I posted that on my Patreon, my honest review. 20 people unsubscribed within minutes. They're like, literally people calling me, you're a shill, you're a liar. And I was like, that's just my opinion, man. But let me explain how I approach looking at all these things. And what I've already established, I look at Star Wars post-Lucas as fan fiction. So I look at it as fellow fans playing in the same sandboxes that we played in, some of them doing it well, some of them doing not well. I also look at what is the agenda of the person making the particular project. Let's just talk about Star Wars right now.
It's hard to skip that now.
Yeah, are they fans doing their best within a corporate structure to tell a story, right? Or are they people with a malicious agenda? Now, I believe Kathleen Kennedy, Rian Johnson, and probably Ms. Leslie Headland, though I don't know that we'll ever see what she did, are approaching this with a malicious agenda, right? I don't think they care about Star Wars. I think Star Wars is a tool for various personal political ideologies and blah, blah, blah in their minds, whatever. So they approach storytelling, that particular franchise, with a malicious agenda. So it is unlikely anything good can come out of that. Whereas I think other people, I certainly believe Jon Favreau loves this. I believe Dave Filoni loves this. I even believe the people that created Obi-Wan loved it. I mean, I read their interviews. They sincerely loved Star Wars. Not everyone liked what they did with it. Some people question whether it went against canon, whatever. But I'm looking at their love of it. They love it. It's very clear to me that they love it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Brianna?
I was saying it with that case, it's like a maybe poor execution, but still coming from a place of passion.
Yeah, and all I'm talking about is that. I'm just talking at this moment about that. So I'm talking about people who love it, and I've read the interviews with the gentleman who was the head writer on that, and he clearly loved it. Not everyone liked what he did. Again, he's working in a corporate environment. I've worked in that corporate environment. I've worked at Disney. I got fired from Disney because I was like George Costanza saying, I will not give up my integrity, right? You know that scene, that episode of Seinfeld where Seinfeld he showed the show about nothing to NBC, and George is in the room, and then they get excited by the idea. And then they start trying to come up with, the executives come up with like, well, okay, so what happens in the episode? And Seinfeld wants the job. So he starts filling in story ideas like, okay, we have an episode where we're just walking on a parking lot or whatever, but okay, this happens till, and then George's like, no, you can't put in any story in this. It's a show about nothing. The episode is about nothing. They just walk around, right?
It's about something.
Outraged, he gets up and walks out to protect his creative integrity. And that's kind of like me at Disney. I said, you want to make Tron bad? I want to make Tron good, right? I will not give up my creative integrity. And I was walked out of the building.
You were walked out.
Oh, nice. That's awesome.
So that my integrity was out there with a box in the parking lot.
That's a good story, Cameron.
It's a great thing. But that links me now to the third point I want to make, which is because I've been doing this for 22 years in this stupid corporate environment of dumb people in Hollywood, and I've worked at Disney, which is the worst possible place in Hollywood to work. I've experienced it. I got fired by Disney. I know it well. And so because of that, I tend to be really compassionate and lenient towards the people making this stuff because I've been in their shoes. Literally, I sit there, watch great scripts or scripts that I think are great, that I think are the best thing I've ever written, be whittled down to not so great after it's gone through the process of everyone's notes and everyone pissing on it, and people who are not very smart, not getting that joke or not understanding that or needing that explained because they think the audience is stupid and they don't realize that the audience is smarter than they are, right? Because they're not the smartest people in the world, but in power. And so I've made the hot dog in the hot dog factory. And so when people say, I don't like this hot dog, I feel bad for the poor person slaving in the hot dog factory because he's trying to make a good hot dog, right? He's trying, and it's horrible. So those are the three things that make me quite generally compassionate and willing to find what is good in something. And I'm enjoying the heck out of Ahsoka. I'm enjoying it. I'm having fun with it. The last episode, and we'll talk about it a little bit. And the last episode where they had that cool, again, there's gonna be spoilers. If you had a chance to watch it, it's been out for a week.
Yeah, spoilers.
Go watch it. It's not our fault if you haven't watched it in a week, right? And so, that whole lightsaber battle where Ahsoka's on the wing of a ship and she cuts another ship in half in space. I mean, I was like, I've had all kinds of scenarios as a child playing with my Star Wars toys and my Luke Skywalker toys, and I never imagined that scenario, and that was kind of cool. Again, it's like, hey, that fan came up with a new scenario that I hadn't thought of, right?
The most relatable thing was when she was trying to move the cup, because everyone I know has tried that. Like,
that's exactly it.
Tried it around, like, come on, it's real.
But Douglas, you hit the exact issue here, and there's people on this panel that will critique that, right? And I wrote it on my Patreon. To me, there's a moment in the last episode where you've got Sabine, who is established to not be Force sensitive, or at least be weak in the Force, right? That's been established. It's very clear on the show. And even if you haven't watched Rebels, I didn't watch a lot of Rebels, but I got that, right? And she's desperately trying to use her psychokinetic powers of the Force to move a cup of, and it doesn't go anywhere. And there's that great line which she, after struggling with it, nothing happens. She goes, "You won this round," to the cup, right? I've said that.
I've said it to salt shakers.
Every child has done this. Every Star Wars fan has. Maybe I can move the bed. Everyone has done it. Again, people have been saying, well, letting her learn the Jedi ways without being Force sensitive is a blah blah blah. Just look at that moment. We've all done it. It's just someone saying, look, I love Star Wars. I did this as a kid. Filoni did this as a kid. You did this as a kid. Let's show somebody doing it as a kid. And that's how I am enjoying it.
Well, I'll be much briefer. I'd rather talk about story since we have Cameron for an abbreviated amount of time. But I did not like the first two episodes of Ahsoka. I found very little that I liked about him. And now Cameron kind of framed how he judges it, the levels he looks at it. And, and my whole thing is when I'm talking with someone who have differing opinions, I take Cameron's criteria. Am I talking to someone who has malicious intent in the conversation, or am I talking to someone who has a different opinion than me? And as long as I don't sense malicious intent, I don't mind to what extreme I disagree with somebody. I can always see where they're coming from, even if I don't agree with what they're saying. So obviously Cameron's got no malicious intent. He's not a shill for any company, clearly. If he got walked out on Tron, he's not shilling for Disney. Anyway, my point is though, like, I could disagree with Cameron and it has zero impact on my attitude on him as a person at all. So anyway, I did have a different take on it. I did not like the first two episodes. I was jarred out of them. Heath, you clipped some clips of me and sped them up. I noticed. I looked like
viral on that.
I look like I'm like. Rah, rah. Anyway, I did like the third episode. In fact, the word that came to mind was whiplash. I was like, the first episodes moved so slow with such ambiguous, slow response dialogue, almost like think of something to say dialogue with the actresses who were extremely deadpanned and almost like the director didn't coax any kind of performance out of them. Like it seemed bizarre. And then I won't get into it, but some of the plot lines didn't make sense. So when I sat down for episode 3, it was low bar expectations, and it opened with a training sequence, which to me is very Star Wars. The fact that she's not Force sensitive didn't bother me at all. That's not really what Star Wars necessarily is about. It's about mastering what you are good at. Like it's the idea of mastering a skill. In this case, the Force. And obviously, Ahsoka believes in Sabine, and she wouldn't waste her time with Sabine if she didn't think there was something there. So that didn't bother me. But there was real training. And I feel like I watched the whole sequel trilogy and hardly got any of that. And here I get it in a nice, and they didn't breeze through it. They spent a lot of time with her in the training, and there was a lot of dialogue. The actresses came to life in the third episode. The dialogue was better, and there was no long pauses or ambiguous dialogue. To me, it was like a completely different director hopped in there, which according to the credits did not happen. I don't know if that's proof positive that it's the exact same director doing whatever or not, but it looked like completely different direction and style. And The space battle I thought was fantastic. If I had criticisms, I didn't really like the sound effects. It sounded like weird machine gunny, and they looked like P-51s from World War II.
They were clearly going for that.
Yeah, totally. But that's not enough to ruin a space battle. It was still very Star Warsy. I just got a real sense of adventure in 3, and it zipped by. Some people actually complained that the episode was too short, but I was like, no, that's better than an hour of slow moving. Give me 30 minutes of good action, good dialogue, and good pacing. I don't care how fast it is. All those Clone War episodes that I loved were 22 minutes. So anyway, Ahsoka Tano, or Ahsoka, the show, I have a little bit of hope that it might do better. Even after the first 2 episodes, I was hesitant to write it off completely because the Clone Wars started with terrible storytelling and found its feet and became a phenomenon. So it's the same people working on this. I am a fan of Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau. So I'm willing to see where this goes. And like Cameron, I will be watching episode 4 tonight. So
I took a lot of notes on episode 3 because Doug told me that episode 3 was better. So I went and watched episode 3. We can talk about it more in detail, but I'll tell you what I thought about it. I thought a lot about, very briefly, I thought a lot about what you said, Doug, when you said, here's how Ahsoka should have started. And you gave, I thought, an amazing exposition on how Ahsoka should have started with the attack, with an attack by Grand Admiral Thrawn and establishing him as a villain and an extremely potent villain, thing like that. I clipped that out and I put that on the channel. And I've thought about that quite a bit. And I was thinking about that, especially as I was watching episode 3, because I was not terribly impressed with episode 3 in general. And because of that reason, and actually when Hera is asked about General Thrawn, and she says, you had told me about General Thrawn on this show last episode. And like she said, Grand Admiral Thrawn is unlike any other Imperial officer. And so I thought about everything you had told me, Doug, about him diving deep into art and the civilizations, about what kind of strategist he is. And I was like, oh my God, when she asked him, Hera is about to really articulate everything that you had told me, Doug, about Grand Admiral Thrawn, about why he is this real badass and why we should be afraid of him. And she gives this really weak, like an Imperial officer, because he killed my friends. And I was like, that's every Imperial officer that's out there. He kills people's friends. That didn't work. And then I realized, I bet that Grand Admiral Thrawn's going to show up in the last episode.
They can't waste Lars Mikkelsen like that. They got to bring him in, I think, in 4 or 5 here.
So
I think he's coming. I think he might come at the end of tonight, or I think he's definitely going to come in the penultimate episode. I don't remember. Is this a 6 or 8 episode order? Anybody know?
8.
Okay, 8.
Then, look, I mean, if they're smart, they're going to bring him in by 6, right? But at the very least, they'd bring him in by 7. And they tend to do, Filoni and Favreau tend to do like the exciting penultimate episode, that gets you pulled into the finale. They tend to do that. So if they're smart, I think we're seeing, I'm hoping that we're seeing a little bit of them tonight, but they still haven't gotten to the other galaxy. So maybe we got to wait for them to do that.